Welcome to the Plan Solutions Incorporated podcast, where we give facts and insight on the latest happenings in the world of economics, financial markets, and personal finance. Plan Solutions provides advice on a variety of financial topics, including investment management, tax preparation and planning, and retirement planning. Chase has 25 years of experience in the financial industry, holds a certified financial planner and chartered financial analyst designations, and has earned a master's degree in taxation and a doctorate in business administration. Chase has a passion for helping clients down the path toward their financial goals. And I'm Jason LaChance, and on this episode, we're going to discuss some great topics, including Social Security Trustee report, also a look at home energy efficient tax credit details, and SPIN credit card benefits, as well as the Plan Solutions Incorporated office bulletin board. Going to look over there and see what's going on. But Mr. Armour, how are we today, good sir?
Doing well. Yeah, we've had a lot going on at the office. Been, things always kind of pick up after the summer, and a lot of just kind of normal seasonal stuff, as well as doing some rebalancing and a lot of trading and things like that. So it's been a busy couple of weeks here at Plan Solutions.
I bet, but we got some great topics we're going to jump into, so let's dive right in. Social Security Trustee report. The trustees of the Social Security Benefit Program recently released their 2024 report. There's some very interesting stuff that they put out, especially concerning expected fall shorts of outflows. And that dwindling limited reserves that we're seeing that just continues over time.
Yeah, not a huge change. Basically the biggest continued trend is just demographic, right? We are not seeing a population growth rate that is a replacement rate. And so, and that trend continues. They revised the total fertility rate from 2 children per woman to 1.9, and it needs to be like 2.1 or 2.2 just for replacement rate. So, automatically assuming we're going to have fewer younger workers paying into the system as the population ages and we have more people collecting benefits, which is exactly, the opposite of what Social Security was structured for, that you'd continue to have population growth and the younger generation paying in. But on the bright side, they did revise upward their estimates for economic growth. Mm-hmm. And so obviously economic growth, means, higher incomes, more people paying in, higher amounts, that type of thing. And then there was also a lower disability incident rate, which, overall is good for a lot of reasons, but means less likely that Social Security to be paying those disability benefits, early to workers that are paying into the system and paying, not having to pay as early and not having to pay for as long. So it's not as costly.
Yeah, well, let's compare 2024 report to the 2023. As you said, there were many positives, but what were potentially some of the downsides? Obviously, you spoke about we are seeing a declining fertility rate that, continues to be put out there in the news, depending upon which sources you follow. So maybe some of the negatives of this report.
Yeah, so far, the ratios are kind of somewhat imbalanced. There's 53 million people that are collecting retiree benefits or dependent benefits. If you're collecting retirement benefits and you have a minor dependent, you can collect benefits for them as well. 6 million collecting survivors benefits for deceased workers, and 9 million collecting disabled workers benefits. Which is basically about 20% of the U.S. population that it's collecting the broader Social Security system. So total, that's about 68 million people. It's estimated there's 183 million people that have earnings covered by Social Security taxes that are paying into the system. But if you look at it overall, the amount that's being collected, and then if you take in, the tax revenue plus a little bit of interest that's credited, it's just not quite keeping up. It's really close. It's pretty even, but it's not quite keeping up. So the total assets have decreased over the last year. And of course, the real problem is that pace of deterioration is expected to continue to accelerate as we go forward.
Yeah, what are we seeing as far as any long-term forecasts?
Yeah, so I mean, right now, over the next 10 years, the ratio of reserves to cost of the program is expected to go down. Right now, the reserves are 188% of the cost, but that's expected to decrease to 88% by the end of 2023. So at that point, the reserves will really be depleted very quickly. So it'll make the program just entirely dependent upon the annual revenue.
Mhm.
And if reserves are going down, obviously that means annual revenue is not keeping up with the amount of benefits that would need to be paid out. So either something needs to be done to correct for that ahead of time, or there needs to be some type of rework in the system, whether that's reduced benefits, higher taxes, maybe broader tax base paying into Social Security. There's a number of different solutions which we can talk about. Or, you'd just be in a system where basically, people, whatever the percentage of Social Security taxes coming in, they're only going to be able to pay a percentage of the benefits that were promised. So it would be a haircut across the board in terms of reduced benefits.
Can pension programs for a period of time run at a deficit? Have we seen any situations of that?
Yeah, I mean, you can kind of compare this to some of the underfunded pension programs. So, for example, we take CalPERS, the California Employee Pension System, one of the largest in the nation. It currently is running at a funding ratio of about 72%.
Hmm.
So, in a way, it kind of looks like Social Security, right? There's not sufficient money coming in. But there's been changes in which they've, changed the payment structure where younger workers are paying in more. Maybe they have to work longer to get the same benefits, so it's reducing the payout structure. So things that they've done to try and kind of slowly bring that back into alignment. We really haven't seen that type of action taken on Social Security, really going back to the 80s, in terms of any major structural adjustments to keep it on track. And so that's probably the type of thing that we're going to need to see, because otherwise it's projected by 2035, the system will only be able to pay out roughly 83% of the scheduled benefits.
Hmm. So what are the main problems, and are there any possible solutions?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest problem is just demographic, right? And,
Sure.
that's difficult to change. Obviously, we can get in a whole debate about the nation's immigration system and if we need, or even people debating about, incentives for larger families, right? I mean, getting back to kind of the old demographic ratios that made the system work. But even any of that, maybe to a degree, a fool's errand, because statistically across the globe, we've seen as countries become more developed, more technologically efficient, et cetera, the birth rate goes down. So it may just be, you can throw incentives, you can try and restructure immigration, but it may not be enough to, really change these bigger trends that are just maybe just a fact of life as society progresses. So so it's hard to say if that's really something that we can even tackle. So if we can't, then we have to look at, okay, do we solve it on the revenue side or do we solve it on the expense side?
Hmm.
Right? I mean, on the expense side, as we said, we could just say, hey, whatever money's coming in, you get that percentage of what you otherwise would have been due, meaning everyone, when it comes time to collect Social Security, takes a haircut. There's been talks about means testing it, meaning if your income's over a certain level and maybe you don't need Social Security, right? Like Warren Buffett's talked about, why does he need to draw Social Security when he's one of the richest people in the country? Even though he's legally able to, he doesn't need it. And so maybe there's some types of means testing that people over a certain amount of income don't receive any benefits, so that money can flow to others that are going to be more dependent upon it. Um, you know, Different ways that we can restructure or even change it like they did in the 80s, where they extended the age,
Hmm.
for younger workers that they're not able to collect until much later. So you're not paying out as much or for as long. The other option is to address the revenue side. So maybe you increase the amount that's paid into Social Security taxes, which actually is already quite high when you look at both the amount that the employee and the employer pays. So that, could become a real, I guess a real tax on the economy and on society. You could expand the income limit because Social Security does actually max out at a certain stage. Once you reach a certain income level, you stop paying in. Maybe you extend that so higher income people are paying for longer. But again, usually when they stop paying into Social Security is when they're hitting those really high income tax brackets, right? So it's kind of Social Security is going down, but income taxes are going up. If you extend it, then those final tax rates are going to get really high if you're including the Social Security and income taxes and some of the other add-ons that already hit high income earners. And the question is then, where does the incentive come from to continue to work past a certain income level? Or you could expand the types of income that pay into Social Security, right? Mm. So, things like, dividends, interest, capital gains, real estate, net rents on real estate or sales of real estate, that type of thing. Those Social Security is mostly paid for out of payroll taxes, not these other types. So, as they've done like with Medicare, they added a Medicare surtax to incomes over a certain level to pay in of a small amount that it basically affects all income. Maybe you see something similar with Social Security.
Yeah. And anything else you want to add here? I mean, all the scenarios are pretty interesting of what could potentially happen.
Yeah, and I think the main takeaway, the recommendation from the trustee board was in essence that we need to not wait to address this, right? So we talked about it's like 2033 is when kind of that deadline when suddenly some decisions will need to be made or there will be some automatic adjustments. But the trustees recommend that lawmakers really start addressing these shortfalls now. So there's an opportunity to phase them in slowly over time. And it's not a big shock to the economy because we have to make some drastic changes because we've let it run so long when we can anticipate that we're going to see this problem down the road.
Yeah. And we've, people can go back in the archives. We've had many situations that we've discussed of reactionary instead of actionary and the greater consequence thereof.
Yeah, and unfortunately, with our politics, it seems like nothing really gets done until it's a crisis. And given that we still have a number of years before it becomes a crisis, chances are it's going to get kicked down. The can's going to get kicked down the road.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's jump over to home energy efficient tax credit details. The Inflation Reduction Act that was implemented around several energy efficient tax credits. We've discussed this, but unfortunately, it appears the laws we've also discussed pretty complicated, and some people that seem to follow the law still aren't getting those credits.
Yeah. The credits are so complicated with the regulations and the requirements, and it's kind of people broadly hear about these different credits that are offered and think, okay, yeah, I'll do that home improvement or I'll buy an electric vehicle expecting to get that benefit. And in many cases, the salespeople, I mean, they're wanting to sell that vehicle, sell that service, and they say, oh yeah, this potentially qualifies for tax credits, making it sound like that's going to reduce the cost. But as with a lot of things, the devil's in the details. Mm. And we're just pointing out because we've seen a number of cases where, people thought that they may be eligible for these tax credits. And when we dug in, we realized that they weren't. So one of the big ones that we've talked about is the electric vehicle credit. It's really complicated based on where the vehicle's assembled, where the materials for the battery come from. I mean, really things that you would never be able to discern just by looking at the vehicle. Or by knowing the make or model, because some are produced in different places. And so it's something that you really have to double check that vehicle does in fact qualify by talking to, the salesperson or the manufacturer or digging in to make sure that you're going to get that credit.
Yeah.
And then in addition, the energy efficient, home improvement There's certain standards that have to be met, and those standards either set by Energy Star or the International Energy Conservation Code. Both which have pretty high standards for what's required and which change regularly. So, it's something you have to keep up on. If taxpayers are, buying a new HVAC or maybe putting insulation in to reduce heat loss or gain on their house, may find that they're actually not eligible if they're not using materials that are to a certain standard. And I mean, I know even for me as a tax professional, I'm not a building materials expert. And so digging in to figure out, okay, what does this mean? Okay, they installed this grade of insulation. Is this number better or worse than what's required? And does it meet the requirements? And what you find is in most cases, it doesn't.
Yeah.
And it's because it's kind of overkill in terms of what most professionals think is reasonable and what the tax code is requiring. And in many cases, the added cost of that material, because it is, higher quality, may far exceed what the tax credit would be if you did upgrade to that higher cost, higher quality material.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard situations as simple as somebody, it had an Energy Star label on said appliance that I bought, and it didn't qualify.
Right. Yeah. Just because it's Energy Star doesn't mean it's the highest.
Yeah.
Pretty much all of these regulations, the way they're written, is it has to be the highest level of certification that these kind of outside entities offer. So yeah, and obviously it's in a manufacturer's interest to meet the lowest standard, so they can get that Energy Star label and look like they're energy efficient, but not putting in all of the additional costs and things that it may take to achieve that highest standard.
Yeah. Now, is there any resource for the consumer when it comes to these types of improvements to be more energy efficient that they can go and double check, or is it kind of a crapshoot?
Well, obviously, there's a lot of information put out by the IRS on what qualifies and what doesn't. But if someone like myself with a background in tax has a hard time navigating it, obviously the average consumer is as well. So really, probably the best practice is if that tax credit is a big part of that decision as to whether or not to do this project or buy this vehicle, it's probably something they should confirm with their tax professional ahead of time to make sure that they will in fact be eligible for those benefits.
Yes, absolutely. Well, and as you mentioned, and we did cover it in a past episode when we were talking about EVs, electric vehicles, and really having to take a look at all those things, as you mentioned atop the discussion on this section. So it is complex. But all right, let's jump into spin credit card benefits. This is a good one. I really appreciate this one because this is something I'm being faced with. Do I have an option of rolling over some of these benefits? It would be nicer to collect on, the points or whatever it is that I have, maybe for, a bigger cash payout or looking at plane travel next year. So, this is great to point out because sometimes people forget you do have constraints of needing to use it, or you might lose it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's some great credit cards out there that offer anywhere from 1 to 3% of spending, basically a rebate of the fees that the merchants are paying to accept that payment method, and then they rebate that back, whether it's for like travel, dining, experiences, shopping credits, sometimes even just straight cash back. Um, but what we found is a lot of people kind of wait and accumulate those benefits and kind of see it as like this extra bonus, right? But the truth is, it's your money. I mean, you overpaid to some extent on your purchases to then get this rebate back. And if you leave it too long, there's all kinds of risks there, right? Obviously, inflation. If those credits are basically static and inflation is running very high as we've seen recently, the real value of what you can purchase or use those credits for is going down. Two, yeah, you need to understand the policy because some credit cards will not keep accumulating them forever, right? There may be a cap or some other type of limit or at some period where they get phased out. And so you have this benefit and then you're just losing it by delaying too long. And then there's always the option that they could change the policy. You've seen that a number of times with like airline miles, is to people like accumulate them to either, use them for when they go on vacation or to upgrade or something if they're going on a long trip. But there's nothing to stop the airlines or the card issuer to change the policy on what you're able to do and change the value of those rewards. So we look at it as this is something that it really makes sense to use them and not let them accrue over many years, where you're losing to inflation, taking the risk of potentially forfeiture, or that the policy changes and the value of those rewards could go down significantly.
Yeah. Well, and we had a discussion, I don't remember if it was on here or you and I personally, about, really looking at those rewards types of benefits as a tool, but not the total aim, because sometimes it seems people can get focused on, well, but it has these rewards. Yes, but are you overspending? Are you able to pay the credit card off each month? Are you just accumulating greater debt? So, I know we had a discussion about that risk when I wanted to educate myself more on, hey, I'm getting these offers for this type of reward and this type of reward.
Yeah, and also looking like some cards have an annual fee, right? But the rewards may be more generous, but you have to weigh it against that annual fee. Or, if you do run into a month where you forget to pay off or maybe can't pay off, they might have a higher interest rate. So you might have the risk of higher interest costs if you get into a bit of a financial bind. So those are all things to look at, as well as just looking at the options that are available to you as, maybe your financial life progresses, your credit score improves, your income is higher. A lot of times people think that what the credit card companies want is for people to not pay off, their balance and charge them that high interest rate. The truth is, what the credit card companies want is the point of sale fees. Mm-hmm. Right? You use it, they get those point of sale fees. It's really no risk to them if you pay off the card at the end of the month, and they're in essence giving you a portion of those point of sale fees. Well, if you're a high income and have really good credit score, they know there's a very high likelihood that you're going to pay that off, and that they're not going to have to worry about trying to collect and charging the interest and things. They're just going to continue to get those point of sale fees. So as you look more attractive as a borrower, they'll give a larger portion of those point of sale fees and rewards to, try and attract you and retain you as a customer. So it may be that you did your research, you looked at what, cards you could qualify for, you picked one that offered a pretty good reward, but it may be that now you could actually do a little better if you were willing to shop around and, take a look at what other cards might be available to you.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's jump on over to the Plan Solutions Incorporated office bulletin board. How did the golf tournament go?
Yeah, golf tournament went great. The Harlan D. Wood and Debbie Dravinga Memorial Cancer Charity Golf Tournament. Unfortunately, a long name. It's we've had to add to it. But it was great. Didn't quite sell out, but we ended up getting really close by the end, so that was good. I think it allowed the tournament to really flow well. We really only had one kind of gimmicky hole on hole 15, where there was a professional long driver that was raising money for charity, and so that added to the amount that was donated. And the dinner was good. The Rancho Marietta Country Club staff did a great job, as they always do. But most importantly, we raised over $10,000 for cancer charities, which brings our cumulative total to just short of $180,000 over all these years. So, not a huge amount as far as it goes in terms of the need and what maybe other larger organizations are able to do. But, for something that we're able to do, kind of, our little part, we're pretty proud of that.
Yeah, as you should be. Absolutely. And it's just great that you and the whole staff get behind this. But it does beg the question, how did you play?
My team played well.
All right.
I'll leave it at that. But we'll be back on the plaque again this year. So that was it's been a few years, and so it was nice to get back into the winner's circle.
All right, I'm glad to hear that. Anything else you want to add, Mr. Armour?
No, just want to thank everyone who supported the golf tournament and the event again this year, whether they played in the tournament, bid on auction items, contributed to cancer charities, just all the different ways that people support the effort. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, we thank you all for listening to the Plan Solutions Incorporated podcast, of course, on Apple Podcast and Spotify. We'd appreciate not only if you subscribe, if you haven't already, but leave us a rating and a review. And you can now watch along on YouTube, where you'll get an animated video following along to the personal financial review. And you can get all those links at plansolutions.com. And if you want to subscribe to the personal financial review, the content that we discuss here on the podcast, send Katie an email, KATIE@plansolutions.com, and get subscribed today.
The views and opinions expressed in this podcast should not be construed as an offer to buy or sell any securities. The information may not be current, and Plan Solutions has no obligation to provide an updates or changes. Plan Solutions does not make any representation or warranty as to the accuracy or completeness of the statements or any information contained in this podcast or any liability therefore, including in respect of direct, indirect, or consequential loss or damage, is expressly disclaimed. Plan Solutions is not providing any financial, economic, legal, accounting, or tax advice in this podcast. In addition, the receipt of this podcast by any listener is not to be taken as constituting the giving of investment advice by any Plan Solutions associate or individual to that listener, nor to constitute such person a client of Plan Solutions. Any reference to a specific company or security does not constitute a recommendation to buy, sell, hold, or directly invest in the company or its securities. Market indexes are unmanaged and cannot be invested in directly. All price references and market forecasts correspond to the date of this podcast.
Plan Solutions is a registered investment advisory firm.